My name is Gideon, a highly skilled digital communication expert, but also a podcast host. My ultimate goal is to communicate God's purposes for this generation while inspiring and empowering my listeners. Welcome to today's podcast on the desire to make changes. This is episode 2. We have been talking about change and how we can embrace change. You see, change is an inevitable part of life, just like we saw from the previous episode. And whether it is something that happens to us or something that we initiate, it can be a challenging and often uncomfortable process. In this podcast, we will explore the desire for change and how the Bible provides us with examples of individuals who desired for change and were able to experience it. You see, we experience 4 distinct types of change in life. Change that happens to us, change that happens around us, change that happens within us, and change that we initiate. We are going to take a closer look at all these types of change. 1. Change that happens to us. You see, this is a type of change that occurs unexpectedly or anticipated and affects our personal lives. It affects our families, it affects our careers, and so forth. We have numerous examples of such changes in the Bible. For instance, when you look at the life of Joseph, it was turned upside down when his brothers sold him into slavery, but through his faith, Joseph was able to trust in God's plan and ultimately rose to become the second in command in the land of Egypt. Now that was change that happened to him. He had not planned for it, he had not wished for it, he had not prayed for it. Number 2, change that happens around us. You see, this is the type of change that affects our society, it affects our nation, it is around us, it's all around the world. And also, it has some impact on us personally, all on our ways of life. An example of this type of change, you can see it in the book of Exodus. When the Israelites were coming from the land of Egypt, the Israelites were affected by the change that was happening around them. But they also had to undergo their own personal changes as they transitioned from being slaves to being a free people. Initially, when the Pharaoh who knew Joseph was ruling and was in authority, the Israelites enjoyed their portion of life. But when the Pharaoh changed and another person came into authority and came into power, there are certain things that Pharaoh initiated and a manner of behavior and lifestyle that required hard work and input by these Israelites that affected them directly. That was change that happened around them and they felt their impact. But even when the time God had purposed for them to leave that slavery, that land of captivity, they had to undergo certain changes so that they could adapt from being slaves but rather to being a free people. Thirdly, we talked about change that happens within us. This is a type of change that directly affects who we are, either physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. This is change that happens within us. An example of this type of change is the transformation of Saul into Paul. Saul was a persecutor of Christians, but after his encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus, he underwent a radical transformation and became one of the most influential figures in early Christianity. When you experience this type of change, your life never remains the same. This is change that happens within us. It is change that God causes to steer us from one point of direction to make a 180-degree turn to another point of direction. When you become born again, you experience such type of change. It happens within you. You know there are certain things you stop doing or you have to stop doing, and you know that there are certain things you embrace and partake and allow those things define your life. That is change that is happening within you. But most importantly is this other part of change, that is change number 4, change that we initiate. You see, most of the times when you experience change that happens to us, we may be lazy and fall into normalcy, accept accept what has come our way. Sometimes we call it fate. You see, that is change happening around us. We have no control over it. And then change that happens within us steers us up. But then there is also another radical type of change. And this is the fourth type of change that I'm calling change that you and me can initiate. This type of change that we create or alter by plan. You see, you purpose and plan we have implemented in order to move us from the present to a preferred future. So you create a plan and you implement this plan so that you move from the present, you move from your current situation to a preferred future. This is change that we initiate. If you don't like your life, you can initiate change to improve your life. We have an example in the Bible of this type of change. When you look at the story of Nehemiah had a desire to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and Nehemiah initiated this type of change. He initiated change. First of all, we read in the book of Nehemiah that he formulated a plan and he executed it even amidst opposition. If you're listening to me, let me make this plain and blank to you. You will face opposition. You will find things that will obstruct you from pursuing your goal, from pursuing your plan. But you should have the zeal, you should have the tenacity, you should have the desire, you should have the moral power within you to say that regardless of the opposition, regardless of what challenges me, I am going to pursue, I'm going to initiate this change, and I'm going to see it through. Same applies to poverty. If you're broke and you don't have money, you're always trying to look out on who to borrow from or on who to beg. My brother, you can change this. You can initiate a discipline in your life, a financial discipline in your life that can cause you to move from one direction to another, even amidst challenging circumstances, even amidst opposition of unemployment. Yes, you can. I've seen people who are not employed but have been able to sit down, formulate a plan and execute it, and life has turned out well for them. So as I try to climax and close up this podcast, I want to leave us with some practical steps on how to initiate change. You see, now that we have explored the 4 types of change, here are some practical steps one can take to initiate change in their lives. 1, identify the change you want to initiate. The first step in initiating change is to identify the area of your life that you want to change. This could be a behavior, it could be a habit, it could be a relationship, or any other aspect of life. As long as you can identify what you don't like about your life, that is a good starting point. Now, once you've identified that, the second thing to do is to set realistic goals. Once you've identified that change, once you've identified that change you want to make, set realistic goals that will help you to achieve that change. Break your goals down into smaller, manageable steps, things that you can do on a daily, on a routine, so that as day goes by, as weeks go by, you're really realizing that specific goal. Thirdly, you have to create a plan. Develop a plan that outlines the steps you will have to achieve your goals. Make sure that your plan is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and it has a time factor attached to it. Because if you don't give yourself time to when you want to achieve a certain thing, trust me, procrastination will find its way. The fourth but most important thing is to take action. I don't care whether you have identified your change that you want to make. I don't care if you have set goals. I don't care if you have a plan that is written down, a blueprint of what you want to achieve. But if you don't take action, you are as useless as a dead dog. So take action. Once you have a plan in place, take action. Start making the changes you need to make to achieve your goals. Be prepared for setbacks and obstacles, but don't let them discourage you. So in conclusion, change is a natural part of life, and it is important to embrace it. The Bible provides us with examples of individuals who desired for change and were able to experience it. We have seen Joseph, we have talked of Nehemiah, we have seen the children of Israelites, how they were bound in captivity, but change happened around them and they were able to adjust And those that failed to adjust even when change was happening in the wilderness, we saw what happened to them. They perished. When change comes, the biggest mistake you can do is to become inflexible, is to fail to be flexible, in other words. So by identifying the type of change you want to make, set realistic goals, create a plan, take action, but most importantly, remember, action is everything. We can initiate change in our lives and move towards a preferred future. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. See you in episode 3.